Welcome, Vince, to Metallarium Pages. It's a great pleasure to talk with you about from Evoken, this new album Mendacium, and more things related to the metal world in general. So we are starting by asking, how are you doing today, and how is the band during the last couple of years? Because your previous album was released like 7 years ago.
Yeah,
Nagogia at the moment.
yeah. I mean, we're doing well now. There's a lot of things that were going on during that time period between you had the pandemic, so that threw a lot of things off. And then you just had people around us like uh, an unusually high amount of like friends passing away. You have parents that age, they get sick.
Mhm.
Some of them die, and it was just like a constant thing in the band where somebody would lose a parent or somebody become very ill.
Mhm.
And as soon as they were ready to get back and get going again with us,
Mhm.
somebody else would go through it and they would be gone for a little while. So it was a lot of
Mhm.
kind of chaotic during that time. And then we had a tour that we did in 2022, 23. So we're rehearsing for that. So that takes time just to get that together and then try to go back to writing. So we started writing a little bit during the pandemic, but then we really didn't start to kick into the writing until after the
Okay.
last European tour we were on.
Okay. I understand. Well, yes, that's right. So in this situation, when did you decide writing songs completely? Perhaps during the pandemic or in the last tour. So what it was the right moment to compose all songs for this new Mendacium?
Well, let's see. Very early on in the pandemic, when the lockdowns happened, there was a period of time where they were starting to kind of ease off a little bit so
Mhm.
people could travel or go wherever. John lives closer to me than anybody. The other guys are pretty far away. They live about an hour and a half away in some cases. John is close by. He's about 15 minutes from where we rehearse at my house.
Mhm.
So we hadn't played in a while, so we wanted to get the rust out. Number one, and you're edgy. You want to play. You've been sitting at home at night. You can't do anything. You could practice and get better your craft, but it was just like, okay, let's get back to doing something. So John came over and we started writing. That was in like 2021, around there. um, then things started to ease up a little bit more, so the guys were coming here and we started working on the songs, but then we had to stop because we had the tour that was coming up. And then after we came back for the tour, we gave it a couple months just to step away for a little bit, get refreshed, and then come back. And that's when we decided, okay, let's start really working on these songs, because we hadn't put anything out since 2018. And usually it takes time between our albums, but this time it was a little longer too. So it felt like it was the right time. And John was starting to come up with a lot of stuff, and everybody was coming up with some ideas. So we're just like, let's work on this and see what we can do, and hopefully get something out soon. And finally we were really able. Okay, we were able to get Ron Thal, so that we set it up with him, and off we went.
Okay. Okay. So now this is more like this is a new album of this one. And for this, what kind of promotion do you have for this new album? Perhaps you will send more videos because this album will arrive next month or in October in this. So what kind of plans do you have before to release an hour after the release of this new album? Perhaps you will release more videos and perhaps you prepare some gigs, some tours, full tours, who knows?
Well, we have a new video just came out
Mhm.
for a song called Known, um, that came out last week. It was our first music video ever. The people that did it are amazing, because we could have never financially pulled off a video of that quality uh, with any near a budget that we could have afforded. So they really did us a huge favor. Then we have the first single that was released, Matins. We have some behind the scenes stuff for the video we're going to be putting out. We have merch that's going to be coming out. We'll be putting that out soon. Design the shirts. We have touring dates coming up for Europe. We're going to be announcing that hopefully soon, in both the US and Europe and in Mexico. And then we're just going to see how many shows we can get in before the end of the year. And then starting in the summer next year, start really ramping it up. Spring, summer. So there's a lot of things on the horizon.
Okay, okay, okay. I understand completely for this one. And now this is your seventh album in your career. But then you started the band in 1992 with a previous name Funerarius at that moment. Then your
Right.
first album arrived in 1998. So, and that's a curious thing because usually the bands from US or Europe didn't delay too much to release at the first album because usually when you compose an album at that moment the bands from there or you from your country when another countries release the album in next 2 or 3 months after or three years after the band was created. So and for that one, so what do you delayed like 6 years to the release the first album from Evoken at that moment?
Well, actually, what we did was it was in this area. It was very difficult to try and find other people of like-minded that were willing and wanted to play slow music. I mean, we're all younger. Everybody just, everybody wants to go, 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 and they want to play fast. And, so it was hard to find people that want to just kind of step back and play really slow. But we actually recorded our first demo in 93, and we put it out on a CD. Usually most bands would put it out on cassette. So we put out on CD called Shades of Night Descending, and we released it ourselves. And I had been in contact with a distributor in France called Evoken, and I was, buying bands that they have on their roster, and they have a distribution list. So I had sent them. So once we got the CDs done, we were just doing what you normally did back then. You trade with bands, you trade with different distributors, and so I sent him a copy of the CD, which is a demo, high-end demo, and back then you had to wait. So it would take 3 weeks to get there, and then you had to wait a month for something to come back. And unexpectedly, what came back was a licensing agreement to license our first release, Shades of Night Descending. So that came out. We put that out in 93. Adi Poussiere reissued it, released it under their label in 94. And then we did a demo in 1996. It was, 16 track back then, and so it was a rough demo. It wasn't cleaned up or anything like Shades of Night Descending was. So we used that to try and shop around a different label. So 98 was our first full-length album, but it wasn't our first release. We actually had we had Shades of Night Descending we recorded. We had a demo that we recorded in 96. We were on the Iron Maiden tribute, Call to Irons, did a Strange World. And then Embrace the Emptiness. So it's, if you look at it purely at, started in 92, first album in 98, you would naturally think, wow, why did it take 6 years to come out with an album? But it actually didn't. It was actually, we were releasing things. It was just so obscure, nobody really knew about it. So it took time to really build up to that point.
Okay, okay, okay. I understand for this one. So now, as you are, well, your music is so slow. Your music, this has patterns, like talking about the funeral doom or funeral doom death in this one. And you was there since the beginning. You would try to create this situation with a lot of bands with Ergoton, Skepticism, or the first band like it was Winter at that moment that created the situation. So now, how do you see the evolution of the funeral doom or funeral doom death since you was there to now when the first steps of this style music appears in the world and now with a well more there is no much too much releases for this album because or for this style because in some ways there is not too many people to hear that kind of music or that's why. So how do you see the evolution of the style since the beginning to now?
Uh, to me, it's vastly different from the perspective of audience. because and bands, when we first started, like you said, you only had like bands like Winter, Thurgothon, Disembowelment, um, and then you had the Peaceville Three, My Dying Bride, Paradise Lost, Anathema. Um, but as far as like the extreme slow stuff, I mean, there was only a couple bands per country, and it wasn't even called Funeral Doom; it was just called Extreme Doom. Or sometimes I would see it marketed as dark metal. I mean, we were just you start trading with bands, so we were trading with Esoteric. We got trading with Skepticism. Meanwhile, we were in contact with Renato from Disembowelment, Nico from Targosan. And it was really, the audience it was a very, very niche genre back then, to the point where you'd be lucky to see somebody at a local show that had a shirt on of like a Disembowelment or a Winter. Like, it was that one guy you would see, and that's it. And you kind of network that way. To now, it's amazing because there's bands. It seems like almost in every country, and it's grown here in the U.S. when it didn't exist back then. So we're getting to do things now that we never would have imagined been able to do with such an extreme form of music. So we're really fortunate, but it's vastly different than where it was when we first started. Because you were hard pressed to find more than 10, 15 people at a show for something like this. But now forget it. It's way bigger than I ever anticipated it could be. Even now, even though it's still a niche genre, it still has an audience, and that audience seems to grow.
Okay, that's right. Right is right. That is right. So, and in this kind of situation, well, as well, one thing that we are talking about is about the stand up, this span attention, as you can see. Now the people just want to hear music, for example, for 1 minute or 2 minutes, or just singles. But the funeral doom is impossible to understand with just one
Right,
song. That's impossible.
right.
So the I don't know. I cannot recognize if everyone can listen just one song and understand the full concept of the album. So that person not exists
Yeah.
in this world. So in this situation. So no, and for you, how this situation affect for the stand up spam attention in the world when you are in a funeral doom metal band? Because mostly all the funeral death metal or full funeral doom metal albums since Winter, since well, it's Skepticism, Tergoton, the albums has a long time for an hour and a half, an hour and 30. Like could be just like a progressive progressive stuff
Right.
for the extreme metal in this one.
Right. Yeah. I mean, now everything's got to be about 30 seconds long, and
Mhm,
you know, and in bite-sized forms, just like in movies with movie trailers. They show
mhm,
bite size of the movie, and then by the time you get to see the movie, you've seen the whole movie in the trailers.
mhm,
But yeah, I mean, attention spans now, because of social media, it's uh it's hard to imagine somebody being able to sit through a 10, 11 minute song or an hour album in one shot. Um, but I think, and soon, I don't think it's going to last too long. Things tend to always come back around. I think people are eventually they're getting a little tired of just the snippets, the short little cuts that go along. And I'm starting to see that people are now, they instead of seeing 20 trailers for a movie and basically basing everything on that, and that's all they can take, and then they go to see the whole movie, they don't like it for whatever reason because it's long, it's a 2 hour movie. Now people are starting to kind of come back around. They want something that's a little long, like that'll take their attention away from the problems that are going on in the world. um, I mean, we still run up, you still run up against the issues that everything's social media, go, 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 30 seconds, reels, scroll, scroll, scroll. Um, but, for us, we don't have that option. If we're going to write the music that we want to hear, that we love playing, it's going to be 11, 10, 12 minute songs, and they're going to be over an hour. Album's going to run time over an hour. Um, And if people can't handle that, so be it. But it's what we love to do. So, we're not changing it at anytime soon. So, but I think it's going to be coming back around when I'm starting to see that where people are getting a little tired of just the short snippets of different things. They want to actually have the whole package, so to speak.
Hmm. Okay. So, and in this kind of situation, we are as we are talking about the history, because now Winter is not longer anymore. Is this band now Disembowelment, a great band with grindcore influence and with Funeral Doom, great band also this band. Now also Thergoton is this band. Like the feel is like the or also Unholy in the first album has this
Yeah.
touch of the
Yep.
Funeral Doom. But then
Mm-hmm.
this band is just remaining continue re-release it or re-release it the first album. The first album is tremendous from Unholy. Then
Mm-hmm.
when in just few of these the first bands are like continue releasing albums. You Skepticism, and I cannot remember the name from the UK band, but I very well know that one.
Esoteric. Yeah.
Yeah, and then this one, just three of these bands are continue releasing. You, the Britain band, and the Skepticism are just the only three bands that are continued releasing albums. So why? So in this situation, so how why do you that the old bands in this situation for Funeral Doom does no longer exist? Because as you said, you communicate with members from Thirgoton, with members from Winter, with members etc. But on disembowelment, but now all these bands are completely split up, and just the three first bands from this style are continue releasing records. So
Right.
why all in this situation? So just why not these old bands are continue working in the new albums? As you, I think you continue communicate with them.
Yeah. Well, I don't know the exact reasons why. I mean, I could tell you just from years ago when we were first starting and we were in letters between Nick and Renato from Disembowelment before their only album was released. He
Mm.
had mentioned in a letter that we're recording this new the album. We're trying to have this specific sound, and it's supposed to kind of have this kind of atmosphere. But we're calling it quits after this, so we're just releasing this and that's it. Because they felt Renato, I guess Renato felt at the time. I don't know this. I'm speculating, but uh, to him it was you release that one album and anything you do after that you're just going to diminish things. I guess he felt like he just wanted to release this one record, and if he did anything else it would more than likely in his mind, I don't know, become subpar. Or just life gets in the way and they can't maintain their band members. They go on to do different things. I think Nico from Thurgothon became a well-known producer in Finland for a while, pretty big producer. um, but I don't know. I can't answer for them as to why they just decided to do one album and that was it, except for what Renato told us regarding Transcendence. Um, you know, I guess we're just dumb enough to keep going. It's the only thing I can think of.
Okay. I understand for this one. So now the funeral doom. So for well, many things people say when we spoke about the funeral doom, people think about just for the Finnish scene or the Finland scene in this one, because like Thergoton, Unholy, and Skepticism were there since the beginning.
Right.
But then, and just or I remember one band, Saturnus from Denmark. Also, it was during this topic of the funeral doom also at the time. And mostly not people remember about you about disembowelment or winter. So and for you, which album was the main? Because in this kind of situation, if we were talking about the styles, when we talk about, for example, from the thrash metal, we have Kill 'Em All created the
Right.
thrash metal, and for the death metal we have like the five albums in the 80s that create
Mm-hmm.
now the death metal. In the black
Mm-hmm.
metal we have the first album from Mayhem that completely created a black metal now, the sounds of the black metal nowadays. If we
Mm-hmm.
relate with this topic for you, which album motivate the groupment of the funeral death metal since the beginning? For me, it is for me. I remember it was Winter, but Perhaps for you, there's another band that nobody knows and is continue hide in the history.
Uh, a lot of it because we're fans of the early death metal that had doomy tinges to it that people know about it. But I mean, what really got us going was like Disavowalment's first demo, so it wasn't even an album. Frozen Illusions demo from Paradise Lost. Uh, the My Dying Bride demo, I think Catching Feathers. I don't remember the name exactly. Um, like I said, the others. Winter, of course, Eternal Darkness. I would say for me, not even Transcendence from Disembowelment, but the Dusk EP that they put out. That really changed. Like with the clean guitars on that EP they put out, I think there's so much has come off of that, and rightfully so, Transcendence. But for me and for Evoken, the EP for Disembowelment is to me is like that go-to album. Like that's the atmosphere. That's the eerie element of it. It's not so much sad or uh, any emotional in that context, just dark and creepy. And there were other bands that did that as well. They played death metal. They're all you have like Ripakulu from Finland, Lord of Putrefaction, things like that. But I would have to point at probably the Disembowelment Dusk EP that really something I can point my finger at.
Mm, okay. Okay, okay. So then this now returning to the discography from Evoken. So you have 7 records in your career. So and you have more than 30 years of existence. You have more than 30 years because you created the band, as I said, in 1998 with a different name. So more than 30 years of existence in your career. So
Mm-hmm.
and this situation with your 7 records for you, which record is the most important album for Evoken for him for in this situation to put you on the map? For you, the big milestone that the Evoken has, or perhaps you have a couple of your records that put you on the map for a lot of bands.
Uh, Gosh, that's hard for me to say because I see them different than somebody on the outside, so it's hard for me to point to the one album uh, because it wasn't something we were really we still even really don't pay attention to at all.
Mhm.
I mean, the only thing I can give an answer as to what I've been told is Quietus. That was our second album. Um, that seems to be a lot of people point to that one and Antithesis of Light, which was the follow up. But I can't say that one or the other just because I don't see the albums in that light. I don't see them as influential. I don't see them as doing anything different than we were ripping off bands that we were influenced by. So just from what I was told from different people, it'd probably be Quietus is the one that kind of got people's attention the most.
Mm, okay, okay, okay. So now, well, one thing let's talk about now about especially for the sensation of the albums because usually the albums, the funeral doom albums has this option of the funeral thing, the suffering thing, or I don't know, or negativity or this kind of situation. If we relate this just one concept, for example, sensations in this situation, uh, how could you describe with one word each album from Evoken? For example, Embrace for Emptiness is the more darker album. The Artra Morts is like the more suffering album, something like that. So how do you describe with one word each album that Evoken released during all your career?
Gosh, good question. Let's see. I would say for Shades of Night Descending, I would say Raw. Uh, Embrace the Emptiness. would say in the dark. Let's see, for quietest, haunting. Um, for antithesis of chilling,
Mhm.
bone chilling. Caress of the void. I would say a weight, as in the amount of weight on top of your chest, like really weighed down. Um, Moors, I would say it's gritty. There's a grit to it, so it's gritty. Hypnagogia, melodic. Mendacium, I would say, is a combination of one word. I would say, I haven't really thought about that one yet. I have to get back to you on that one.
Okay, okay, okay. I understand. I understand completely. Now, so one we are very close to this interview, Vince, and for this one, so well, you said one thing about this one. Usually, the death metal since the 80s has this kind of approach to be some funeral stuff, disemboweled, as you said it, mixed for these acoustic elements, and the first album has this kind of elements with grindcore stuff. So funeral death with grindcore stuff, that's not unusual. Now it's usual because a lot of bands can mixture, but at that moment
Right.
that it was completely unusual. But
Yeah, I was totally.
that is the beauty of the death metal. So the beauty of death metal has this kind of approach to mix with every kind of style they bring the worlds create, because the death metal mixed with the doom, the death metal mixed with the funeral doom, the death metal mixed with the grindcore and with the black and with the technical progressive
Right.
etc. So since you were there since the beginning, since this explosion of the death metal appeared with the fierce bands with Morbid Angel, Bull Trower, Nihilist, Death, Autopsy, and this one. So why always the death metal has this kind of approach to mix with every kind of style that it brings word to us?
Uh, I think you have to. There's no guardrails, so to speak. Because if you look at every other genre of music, if you even attempt to mix two things together, usually it doesn't go over well, or people are opposed to it. As back then, to hear a band go from an extreme speed to extreme slow was, it was unheard of for the most part.
Okay.
Uh, I think it really depends on the band itself, because there are death metal bands that just won't. They just stay, straight ahead, old school death metal, and they don't really venture outside of that. I just think you're not so worried about the commercial appeal. So you have it provides you a little more freedom to be a little bit more experimental, because nobody in death metal is a millionaire for this. They're not walking the red carpet for the Grammy Awards. No, they're not. They're not showing up in high-profile documentaries on the rich and famous. So you're a little. You have the freedom to express and to combine different things at will, because you don't have to worry about the commercial appeal. I guess some of them have to because that's their career, but for the most part, from our early, in our early days, it's just you didn't care. It's just whatever sounded good, whatever created the atmosphere. If that meant throwing in grind, death metal, black metal, Black Death, anything to create that atmosphere, it's because you had the freedom. You're not so confined by the guardrails of like commercial success.
Mm. Okay, okay. So, and for this, we are very close to ending this interview, not Vince. And for this one of the last questions for this, well, one thing that captured my attention compared for this Mendacion compared to the previous one, it is like this is the first time like the band using a different kind of approach in the cover art, because
Right.
usually the cover arts from Evoken has this situation from the funeral with the first album, or with Kitus this has this information like a puzzle. There,
Mhm.
And usually the funeral doom metal band this kind of approach, and la puzzles or darkness or this situation.
Right.
And this one, when I take a look for this one, the cover art is like some more a death metal cover art if we relate with something with some kind of topic, and is some in with our death metal cover art in this situation. So and now why, since all your career started with this kind of approach in the cover arts, with the funeral stuff, with the targets, with the puzzles, or I remember the previous cover art like the owl in like the owl in some farm, something like that. But now I saw that it's more like the bleeding and a death metal cover art.
Right. Yeah, it's this one was actually I had found one. I was online one day and I was looking at art because I wanted something. Just the music really felt like okay. I have the story, the concept of the album. I have the lyrics. I have the preface for the lyrics that also serves bookends to make the lyrics and the song titles sound to be able to comprehend what the story and the concept of the story is. In order to do that, I felt like we needed to capture it and in a modern way, painted representation of the artwork you would have saw in the mid 14th century. So they look very oddly shaped. Their demons are always odd looking. Um, when people read the lyrics and they read, there's a letter in the layout that serves as preface for the lyrics, and it gives some context to the lyrics. That's when they'll realize why that's there. Uh, if I explain it, I don't think it'll do it justice, but I had given everything over to Worthless, who's the artist, the backstory, the lyrics, the music, and gave him a couple of ideas to run with, and he came back with exactly what we were looking for. Um, we wanted it to actually represent the music in a way that was kind of like jarring that maybe you wouldn't have expected before to see like the blood. Um, but once people get to read the lyrics in entirety, understand what the story is, the letter that serves as its preface, it'll make more sense. And I think people maybe not. They'll see that it's not just there for shock value; it's part of the story.
Okay, okay. And one of the last question, the last question for this is because you said one thing, because since I started to hear this kind of style in the 90s, all the time for me is like for example Kitus, when I saw for the cover art for the first time, it's like a puzzle. And you said it, mostly when you create an album you create the concept and a history in the lyrics. So and perhaps all albums in the situation, and obviously the long run time is more than an hour, mostly all albums. So that's completely normal that we can assume that all albums from Evoken has this kind of approach, like a conceptual albums, or it's just, for example, an experience on a different kind of level.
It's the early albums weren't they were more focused. I would say the lyrics more like more poetic than actual concept or story. Um, Basically, the concept I kind of started using on Autre Moors, which is Black Death in Latin. Um, and I really enjoyed kind of coming up with a whole setting for the album to give some sort of something to actually imagine a person to create in their own mind and they can expand upon if they want. So I really enjoyed doing that. Um, so that's why you see Hypnagogia had a concept behind it. Mendacium has its concept and story behind it. Um, but the early albums, they were more of a poetic lyric content. So there was a little, you know, the album covers were more geared toward kind of just setting an atmosphere, but not really giving much context of what's in that atmosphere. You know, just basically setting up, okay, this is a dark, brooding, haunting atmosphere, and then take a step back.
Oh,
These
okay.
give you a little bit more than that. It gives you a reason to look into why it's brooding, why it's dark, why it's haunting. There's there's more context to the lyrics, so I think it'll allow people to actually expand upon it. Maybe they can come up with better ideas and even extend the story if they want. I think that's really interesting. I've always been a fan of bands that do that. As long as they don't overdo it, so I try not to overdo it. Um, but yeah, that's that something that we started recently. I just really enjoyed doing, but it wasn't something that was always there from the beginning.
Mm. Oh, okay, okay. Well, Vince, we arrived to the sad moment of this interview. Thank you very much for your time. Always a record from Evoken is a great one. You will
Thank
have
you.
no, I think you don't have a bad record. So if some
Oh,
people
thank
find a
you.
bad record for that one, it's because some is mad with their lives. I think that's the only
Yeah,
reason
thank
for
you.
this one.
That's
So
I'm quite
and
honored. That
congratulations on this new Mendasium. It's a tremendous
thank
one. And perhaps do you
thank
want to add something to your Latin American fans that expect someday a full Latin American tour here. Who knows when, because we don't know exactly about this. And obviously, Methalerium followers.
uh well, again, check out the new video we have out. Um Thank you to everybody that's supported us over the years. Um you know, we are going to tour for this record. That's coming soon. Um you know, just don't I'm not a fan of singles, so when you listen to the album, the best thing to do is to listen to it in its entirety, as opposed to just piecemealing like with singles like that are out. Um, and you know, if come up to us if you see us, let us know what you think of the album. If you hate it, if you love it, you know, we want to hear it. And you know, we'll see people out there, and uh, you know, hopefully it'll we'll have more info coming out soon.